Eagle, and it's my privilege to be your moderator for this evening. This is the debate between the candidates for the 41st Senate seat, replacing the retired Don White. I would like to thank Armstrong for televising our program this evening, and I would ask for everyone's courtesy in that being that it is being taped professionally and being broadcast live, I would ask that no one try to video while we are doing this program. It would just be disruptive, and we ask for your courtesy in that. I'd also like to thank the Butler radio station, who is streaming the program live as well. So we are trying to reach, between the two of them and my newspaper, we are trying to reach everybody as well as we possibly can. I want to thank Butler County Community College and President Nick Newpower for hosting us this evening, as they have done for many, many years. It is such a wonderful place to be able to do this, and they are so gracious to us. And I also want to thank the magical Larry Stock. You noticed how I didn't have to scream and yell to get everybody in their seats. Larry just turns the lights off, so you either get to your seat or you fall down trying to. So thanks, Larry. Appreciate that. Welcome to our candidates. Here's how we're going to do things. We will have a 2-minute introduction for each of you. Use the 2 minutes as however you would like to. Wave to family, you know, whatever you feel like doing. After that, we will begin the debate. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to answer a question. Then the opposing candidate will have a 1-minute rebuttal time. Then we will switch that around, and the next question will go to the opposite person. Okay? So, if you are ready, we will begin. Joe, we'll start with your introduction, please.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you to the Butler Community College for hosting us. I appreciate the local media outlets and the Butler Chamber of Commerce for having us this evening. I want to thank Dr. Boser. It's a pleasure meeting you this evening. I want to congratulate you for stepping across the line and offering yourself as a candidate and for public service. I have a tremendous amount of respect for anybody, regardless of party affiliation or political point of view, who presents themselves as a candidate for public office and as an individual who's willing to serve our public, and that deserves a tremendous amount of gratitude. My wife Gina and I have grown up here in Western Pennsylvania. Our families have grown up here for multiple generations, and together we're raising our 4 children in Indiana Borough. And I want for our 4 children what I think all of you want for your family, your friends, and your neighbors, and that's an opportunity to grow and prosper and to succeed right here in Western Pennsylvania in the communities that we have come to all deeply love. I view public service as a noble profession. Public service is in my blood. These communities that make up the 41st Senatorial District have my heart. I understand their challenges. I understand their opportunities. During my time as Senator White's Chief of Staff, I've traveled to every corner of this district trying to solve real problems for real people. I've spent a lot of time in Butler County knocking on doors, particularly down in the Sarver area. I've gotten to understand the issues that people in the 41st District in Butler County hold close to their hearts, and I'm eager to serve. I'm ready to serve day one. Whoever is elected will take office in early June at the most critical time of the legislative session, and I believe I'm most prepared to represent the people of the 41st District. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan?
I also want to thank BC3 as well as the media, the outlets, in particular Butler Eagle, for their choice to step forward and offer this opportunity. I think it is an important hallmark of our democracy to be able to have questions and perspectives from both sides when we have a race. I think it's how we hold our public officers accountable. I think it's how we ensure that the will of the people is actually carried forward. And so I appreciate this today. I appreciate the fact that you're here today and you're participating in it, and I welcome the chance to get to hear the areas in which we are similar and also some of the areas in which we might approach things differently. I believe that the aim, though, is ultimately the same, although the routes we may see to get there are different. I also have been living in this district, in Indiana County specifically, for nearly 20 years. Had kids that attended the public school who are now adults and working and paying taxes of their own, raising kids. And I have also worked for a number of years before that, 20 years actually, in human services in rural areas. And it afforded me the opportunity to see and understand at a deep level the ways in which poverty in particular is connected to significant social problems, issues like addiction and domestic violence and families having to be broken apart. I think that there are answers to these things, but I think it includes and must begin with economic development. I am not, I'm not a politician by training. 20 years human services, 20 years nearly teaching, and in between I was a student, a PhD in policy at Cornell. But so I have skills in understanding the connection between policies and through that our laws and the conditions that people actually live in. And it's what I've been seeing in recent years that has led me to make the decision to step forward. So I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to be here tonight. Thank you. Also, before we begin, I need to say that when you hold the sign up, I can't see it. Okay? So maybe forward or something, but thank you.
All right, thanks, guys. The last two said they could see him. I know you're down there someplace, but, you know.
I have older eyes, Ron.
Okay, I understand. Okay, so good luck to both of you. Do your best. I want to point out this first question came to mind simply because in looking at the previous administrations representing the 41st District, I was astounded that 3 people have represented the district for the past 70 years. That's an amazing number, whether it be good or whether it be bad. So my question to you to begin with, Joe, is that good or is that bad? Or having one person for 20 years, another for 30, and then a third person for 20 years, is that good representation or is that bad representation?
Well, those individuals have served at that length of time because the voters elected them. A state senate term is for 4 years. And in this case, in this special election, this term will be for essentially 18 months. And whoever is elected will go back before the voters and have an evaluation by the voters to determine whether or not they're doing the job that they expect their state senator to do in Harrisburg. So I would say that that's a reflection, and those individuals were both Democrat legislators and Republican legislators, that the voters in that district at that time believed they were representing the interests of that district. And so as far as I'm concerned, if the voters continue to elect an individual to represent them as the voters want, then that's perfectly fine.
Very good, thank you. Susan?
I also believe that the best form of term limits is elections, and I believe it's important to leave it up to the voters as well. I do have a concern, though, when I see that 97% of the incumbents in office in the state legislature are reelected every year. So the 30 years, or the number of years that you're talking about, is not unlike what's happening in other districts. And I think that in itself does constitute a challenge. And I'm also concerned with the ways in which money might play a role in that as well. But that's something I expect we'll come back to.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next question is for you, Susan. In Middlesex Township, a lot of residential development is taking place. Mm-hmm. Route 228 is being upgraded, and the sewage plant serving the township has capacity for more development. How is the township managing current development, and is it prepared for anticipated growth?
I think that kind of economic growth is absolutely welcome in Middlesex, as it would be in any of the areas that are outside the more direct suburban areas. So I believe that it is a sign of good things. We see the same thing actually happening down in Murraysville as well. So I think there are some supports in some ways. I also think there are some challenges. I believe that the people are certainly doing the best that they can. I am concerned, though, with regards to whether or not the road development itself for local traffic is going to be enough. The route that goes, and the number's escaping me, 228 maybe?
228?
228, that goes from 28 all the way over into Cranberry, has had lots of problems with congestion. I think that's only going to exacerbate with this. I'm also concerned about the educational development as well. Much more influx of people means schools that start to max out at capacity, and then how that actually gets funded, I think, is a question that they will need to be facing.
Okay, Joe.
Thank you. As I've traveled through Middlesex Township, I've been impressed with the development that is occurring there. I think your question speaks a lot to the power of local government and how they manage, or in various cases may not manage, development through zoning or other ordinances. The 228 corridor is very congested. We've had several conversations with the Butler County Commissioners and PennDOT District 10 about addressing that, and I do want to say I was impressed that Butler County was able to secure a $20 million federal grant to hopefully address some of the major congestion issues along that corridor, and I'd be very eager to continue to help addressing those problems.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. Joe, the next question is yours. Middlesex Township relies on its joint comprehensive plan adopted in 2005, which was called Vision 2020. It was a 15-year plan, and here we are. The plan includes a commercial corridor along Route 8, agricultural zones in the southwest and northwest corners, and residential neighborhoods branching into areas not zoned to preserve the township's rural aesthetic. Is it working, and how do we update that?
Well, I think in many cases, comprehensive plans, you know, the challenge with comprehensive plans is they're just that, they're a plan. They're not necessarily, as I understand them, always binding documents that strictly guide growth and development. You know, I think you truly have to look at your local elected representatives and your supervisors to understand whether or not that is working. I can tell you there are areas in our district, and Dr. Boser mentioned Murraysville as well, that have grown. And sometimes you can see the consequences of municipalities that do not plan and prepare for development to make sure that it's done in an orderly and organized manner. Because once that toothpaste is out of the tube, so to speak, you can't get it back in.
Very good. Susan?
I think that the question of how well it's going is really a question that's best answered by the people who live in the district. And so I think that it's something that I would want to hear more about from them in terms of what they're doing. I also know that, as Mr. Pittman said, that plans are plans, and there are always going to be unanticipated consequences. And I think what's important is how they're able to adapt and take advantage of additional resources that might be secured and address the challenges that come up. And again, one of the challenges I would raise is congestion. Certainly the expansion of the corridor along 228 is going to help, but that doesn't necessarily help as much when the additional side roads and necessary side roads aren't developed as well, and that's going to take funding too. So I think there are some challenges yet to face.
Okay. All right, here comes the fun. Why do you support or oppose the anti-prohibition referendum in Middlesex Township?
The anti-prohibition referendum. I will be honest, I don't know what it is.
Well, they're trying to decide whether or not to allow the sale of alcohol in Middlesex Township. It is currently prohibited.
Interesting. You know, in my opinion, I'm a strong believer in local government. A lot of the work I've done has been with local government over the years, and I believe that this is first and foremost an issue that is up to the people who live in Middlesex and the people who represent them. If it is their choice to have prohibition of alcohol, then I would respect that. And I don't think it's my business, quite honestly. I think it's theirs.
Okay. Joe?
Well, we've seen several municipalities throughout the 41st District tackle this very issue, and they do tackle it at the ballot box, and you do have to respect whatever decision the voters decide. But I will say, once that is passed, you have to understand and appreciate the development consequences that will occur, because obviously that opens it up to additional restaurants, hotels, things of that nature. And so I would just suggest that as the voters make that decision, they have a comfort level with their local government's ability to manage the significant changes that will occur in the municipality as a result of it.
Okay, thank you. Joe, what is your opinion on the provision in Middlesex Township that allows shale gas drilling on property in residential agricultural districts? That ordinance is being challenged in court.
So the ordinance permits drilling within,
It does currently allow for gas drilling on property in residential agricultural districts.
okay. Well, the issue of local ordinances to regulate the drilling of natural gas has always been a very tricky one. And I think one of the biggest problems we have is a lack of uniformity when we have natural gas exploration. A lot of it has to do with the ownership of the leases, who owns those leases, how they're operated. And of course, what you also have to keep in mind, particularly whenever you're talking about the vertical drilling, is that you may have a well pad some significant different distance away from where the gas is being extracted from under the ground. And so I think you have to take a look at that as well. But I'm not going to be able to comment on that ordinance specifically.
Okay. Susan?
I do have an opinion on this. I, first of all, respect completely that resource extraction, whether it's shale gas or oil or coal, is an important part of the economy of the region. At the same time, though, I also believe that we need to respect the rights of homeowners and local districts in terms of the quality of life that they wish to have within their communities. And it has troubled me for some time that Pennsylvania has not respected the particular preferences of townships or municipalities with regards to this. I think that, I've seen it happen over in Indiana County with regards to Grant Township, which tried to stop an injection well and lost. Murraysville has recently challenged the right to drill in the municipality of Murraysville, and there were public hearings about it, and the council decided that they were going to lose too much money from the state through the lawsuit from the state. It really seems to me that the local district should work in partnership with the people, with the people at the state, and that decisions should be made that both support and protect the industry, but also support the rights of people in terms of the conditions under which they're going to be living.
All right. It's pretty much a follow-up question. We currently have an impact fee that is imposed on drilling, but many people feel there should be a severance tax as well, or in replacement of, or whatever. What is your position there?
I am strongly in support of imposing a severance tax. I believe that the impact fee as it currently stands, it helps to mitigate some of the costs associated with the impact of the drilling industry. However, honestly, it bothers me that the resource extraction is taking place, and the Pennsylvanians themselves are really not getting out of it what I think they have a right to. As an example, in Texas, they have a gas tax there, a severance tax of 7.5%, and last year, despite having a severance tax, which people say is going to depress drilling here, Texas actually found that there was an increase, a 50% increase in resource extraction of oil and gas down there. And last year alone, it brought $6.7 billion into the state revenues. honestly do not understand why we're leaving that money laying on the table.
Joe?
Well, I mean, let's be honest. The impact fee is a tax, okay? Natural gas producers are paying a tax. They've been paying a tax since 2012. They've paid $1.4 billion of the impact tax. The issue is that those dollars largely remain locally. They don't go down to Harrisburg to get redistributed. They stay right here to address local needs. And as far as I'm concerned, the impact tax is working just fine, and the last thing I want to do is send additional dollars to Harrisburg for redistribution to other parts of the state when it can stay right here.
May I respond?
Yes, you may.
May I respond? I think that that's all well and good, but I still believe that we've got some real problems here in the state. I think that we have had significant cuts in education in particular. We have needs in the state in terms of high-speed broadband, in terms of infrastructure development. Quite a lot's needed statewide. And this is a resource of the state. And I again, state that I don't believe it is prudent or makes good business sense to leave that money on the table.
Okay. All right, Joe, what would you do to help the farmers in the district?
The ag industry is undergoing some terribly significant challenges. And when you look at the ag industry as a whole, whether it's your dairy farmers or your beef farmers or any element of the ag industry, we do have to do much more to address their concerns. I will say I've run into a lot of farmers throughout the 41st District who were fortunate enough to enter into leases for the production of natural gas on their property, and it has saved their family farms, the royalties from those wells. And so I think that was significant and important and should not be forgotten. We recently eliminated the inheritance tax on the family farm, which I think was very critically important. We've made additional investments in the marketing and promotion of the dairy industry in particular. And I think one of the biggest things we did at the federal level is allow our schools to finally put whole milk and real milk back in the cafeteria. And that was long overdue. Those waivers are available, and my only wish would be that school districts would be more active in submitting those waivers.
Very good. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Susan, please. I was forgetting we had a rebuttal.
Okay, first of all, I have noted that the leasing of the properties for resource extraction has allowed a number of the farms to survive. I was attending meetings last summer, though, with the farm bureaus in Indiana County and a couple of other counties as well. And one of the things that I learned, the Farm Bureau was reporting that many of the early leases that had been signed had been written in such a way that while farmers were getting a lot of the money right up front, after the initial flush, they began to add all kinds of deductions and fees, sort of like your Comcast bill, that started to greatly reduce what they were taking home. There were even some farmers, claimed by the Farm Bureau, that were actually paying to have the gas extracted from their property, which strikes me as insane. So I think that's something that we have to look at in terms of improving those contracts. Secondly, I also believe we have to be promoting broadband, high-speed broadband, in order to take advantage of the newer technologies. I believe we need to develop the dairy processing industry. We had so many dairy farms go under when the Dean's Milk contract was dropped for about 79 farmers through the central part of western Pennsylvania. But if we'd had a dairy industry and we had diversification of processing, then that would be possible. And finally, there's been quite a bit of talk about eliminating property taxes, and I'm assuming we'll probably come to that at some point. But one thing I want to say is that with regards to that, I am in favor of reducing significantly property taxes on family farms.
Okay. I'm going, this question's not on here. I'm going to do a follow-up question. Okay, how do you reduce taxes on residential, the residential aspect of a family farm only for farm people and not change the rate structure for everyone else?
I honestly believe that the rate structure has to be changed significantly. I think we have an awful lot of problems with the rate structure for income tax in the state, with the property taxes in this state, and I think we have a great deal of work to do there.
Okay, so you didn't mean just for the, just for farm families?
I believe we have to reform all of it. And in the, for example, right now, SB 76 and HB 76 are both calling for elimination of property taxes for school districts. That would include agriculture as well as commercial and industrial. And I think that I do support that elimination for agriculture.
Okay. Anything you want to say, Joe? All right.
If this is the only property tax piece, I would like to,
There's another property tax
okay,
question.
then
All right. Summit Academy. Can anything be done to reduce or eliminate threats of escapes and problems that are associated with Summit Academy?
that's a
Whose
difficult,
question was it? I don't recall. Whose turn am I on?
I,
I don't remember, actually, you asked just me the last one, so I
Okay.
presume it's.
okay. You know, that's a difficult question, that's a difficult issue. I think we need to sit down and have a serious conversation with all the stakeholders and try to come up with solutions, and go from there.
I missed the first part of your question.
The question was what can be done to reduce or eliminate the escapes, the problems that we have associated with Summit Academy. Summit Academy is the
Okay,
is the home for wayward youth out in Herman.
okay.
They like to be referred to as students, but they're there because they've committed crimes.
Okay, okay. That's actually something I have some personal connection to. The first part of my career, I mentioned, was in human services, and I actually spent about 10 years running a facility for adolescents. Dealing with escapes, honestly, it first begins with a close look at the facility itself. You know, the programs that they're running, how they're operated, the nature of the youth that they're taking, the kind of supports for the youth, for the families. It is a complicated issue. It does involve stakeholders, but I think it first begins with a close look at the facility.
Okay. Back to you.
Sure.
Do you have any ideas for attracting a grocery store to serve rural areas like Saxonburg and Shakora that lost their local grocer whenever our Freedman's chain closed?
Yeah, I'm actually one of the leaders with a project in Indiana called Local Foods, Local Places. I wrote a grant about a year and a half ago to actually the Department of Agriculture. It was a federal grant that brought a lot of stakeholders together to talk about in what ways we might work with local agricultural producers to increase access of local food to the people within in some of the more food desert places in Indiana County. And actually, we made a great deal of progress with it, and we had some very good ideas. Now, the thing is that the ideas were specific to Indiana County, and we had a large meeting of stakeholders from farmers and the county and the townships and a variety of others who were involved in agriculture and also access to foods. I think the answer, quite frankly, is not about looking to attract a large chain store from the outside, but rather providing markets for local farmers who need markets for their agriculture and making that local foods available to the people.
Joe?
Well, I think the issue speaks to a larger issue that we have in terms of our rural economy and our ability to revitalize downtowns in some cases or to encourage overall community revitalization. And so I think we could certainly offer some tax incentives. I think the LERTA program, for example, is a fairly effective program to enhance development generally within communities. I think we should look at that. I think we should look at other efforts to make the towns overall much more attractive. And I think, as Dr. Boser said, I think she's absolutely right. We need to work to provide local markets for local produce, as well as local dairy and other ag products.
Thank you. Okay. What should the state legislature be doing about dramatically outdated tax assessments like the 1969 assessments that Butler County uses? Should counties be forced to reassess? If not, why? And if so, what money should pay for those reassessments?
Well, the best way to address the issue is just eliminate the tax. The property tax, the property tax, particularly the school property tax, is an archaic, subjective way of taxation. It doesn't belong in our form of government anymore, and I believe it should be eliminated. I have a lot of empathy for what counties go through. Indiana County recently went through a reassessment. They spent millions of dollars to come up with arbitrary reassessments at taxpayer expense. The reality is it's a glorified appraisal, and so my approach would be to eliminate the school property tax as a big way of addressing the issue.
Okay.
I'm not opposed to eliminating property tax, but SB 76 has some problems, some significant flaws that for me are a no-go. First of all, the property taxes that they're looking to eliminate are school property taxes. My understanding is that other property taxes would remain in place. In eliminating the school property taxes, those monies would get turned over and revenues would be picked up instead through sales tax and an income tax, which, actually going back to the point that you were making before, takes it from the local realm and puts it back in through Harrisburg and leaves Harrisburg to send it forward. And one of my challenges with it, first of all, is that my understanding of the bill as it's been described and written up is that it actually keeps exactly the same funding formulas that are in place right now. And I think that we have problems with gross inequities in funding in school systems. As a matter of fact, in terms of equity of school funding, Pennsylvania ranks 50th out of 50 states. And this isn't going to change that. The other issue with it, though, is that it pulls the property taxes also out of the commercial and industrial. As I said before, it does it for agriculture too, but I'm fine with that. I am opposed to it coming out of commercial and industrial, and that actually leaves an awful lot of money that was being picked up. My understanding, if I'm remembering correctly, it was about $3.5 million of revenue that needs to come from another source then. And that then comes out of income tax back to people. So in essence, it's shifting tax burden to individuals and people who are already very hard pressed. So it's not a good solution as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Recently, our county launched the Butler County Growth Collaborative, an innovative, unified approach to economic development. How can you assist this county with economic development from your seat in the Senate?
I think there's a number of things that we can do. First of all, as far as economic development is concerned, I am a passionate supporter of local development through small business specifically. I think that one of our greater challenges has been that the development that we've done heavily in the rural areas in particular has been to try to attract large corporations to put plants or facilities here and also do so through tax breaks. And I think that combined with low wages is part of a death spiral, quite frankly, for the rural areas. So I think that the better idea is to focus on local development and creation of local business. I think we do that through low-cost loans. I think we do that through providing them with access to technological support specific to emerging economies. I think that happens through the field of renewable energy. We've got a very long history as an energy producer in this state, and I think that renewable energy should be a place that we're putting a lot of attention and a lot of rural development. I also believe that we have got right down the road here in Pittsburgh some of the top engineering minds in the world through Carnegie Mellon in particular, and there's a lot of potential for developing technological industries that could be located up here if we had broadband internet that allowed us to work through online mechanisms in the rural areas. So those are some of the things I think I would start with.
Many of us are critical of our tax dollars going to support mass transit. It's not something that really touches Butler County that
Did
way.
you get a
I'm
chance
sorry,
to respond?
did I skip you?
I think you did, but that's okay. Well, is it,
Second mistake this year already.
as it relates to economic development, specifically to Butler County, I think the first objective as a state senator is to communicate and collaborate with the local elected officials to understand what the needs and the priorities are, and then do your very best in Harrisburg to deliver on whatever those priorities may be. I think in a broader perspective, we've got to look at Pennsylvania, and we've got to understand that we are not an attractive place for employers to want to locate and grow. I think we've got to look at a complete overhaul of our employer tax structure. We are not competitive among our neighboring states. Our regulatory reform is a must. Our lawsuit abuse reform is also a must. And I think those are broad policy initiatives that need to be pursued in Harrisburg to promote overall economic development.
Ron, if I could respond quickly. Actually, I think that we are stronger as a business environment than you might have characterized. We've been ranked in terms of business-friendly states. Actually, Pennsylvania is number 26 compared with New York, New Jersey, Ohio, and Maryland, which are all in the low 40s. And it also has to do with the corporate tax rate that we've got. Back in the 1970s, it was actually a 4.9% share of GDP, and I'm sorry, my numbers are wrong here. It was 28% of our general fund back in the 1970s. It's down to 15% today. We've had significant tax cuts already, and my understanding is we're proposing to go from 9.99% to 6.49%. So I'm not sure that we're not already an attractive business environment in terms of taxes. There may be other reasons.
Well,
like
I would tell you
broadband.
the CNI tax, the 9.99, is the highest CNI tax in the country. So it's certainly not attractive.
How would you proceed to fairly address the unfunded liability in the state pension systems and provide for the long-term solvency of these programs?
Well, at this point, we got to pay the bill. We just had our revenue numbers come in through the month of April. We're at an $828 million surplus ahead of estimate 10 months through the fiscal year. I think a top priority of that should be to invest those dollars into the pension fund ahead of schedule, ahead of our payments. These payments are choking our school districts, they're choking our state government, they're unsustainable. We enacted 2 rounds of reforms in 2010 and 2017. Those reforms had an impact. They were not nearly as robust as they needed to be. And so I think we have an opportunity in this upcoming budget to help pay the bill, and that's the first step we should take.
Okay. I think that the problem is that I don't believe that the state should be in the business of pensions. I think that what we should be doing instead is investing that money in the market, quite honestly. I mean, I'm a public employee. I work for the state system of higher education, and I make regular contributions. My employer does as well, but it doesn't go into a state pension. It goes into TIAA-CREF, and it's in the market, and actually, I've done well with it. And I think that that's more of an option for everyone. I don't think the state itself should be in the business of holding pensions and making those payments.
Okay. I'm not a hunter. I've never owned a gun. But most of Butler County believes in hunting. There's been a lot in the news lately, everything from changing deer season to, of course, there's always talk of changing gun laws. All right, where do you stand on those issues?
Happy to talk about that. First of all, I want to make note of the fact that there have been some Democrats who have introduced into the House a proposal to put a $10 gun fee for registration for gun owners, $10 for every gun that you own, annual fee. And actually, I was quoted by Representative Pyle, frankly, at a gun bash recently, as saying that I was in support of that. It's not true. I'm not. I don't support it at all. I come from a family, I don't own a gun personally, but I come from a family that is rural. My family's hunted. I've got venison in my freezer. I know how to cook it. I was in the rifle club when I was in high school and a very good shot. My family members and good friends all now are hunters as well. I respect the Second Amendment, and more than that, I respect our culture and our way of life. So I don't have any problems with that whatsoever. I will say, though, that as a mom and as a grandmother, I am gripped with pain every single time I see a mass murder take place in our schools, in theaters, in our churches and synagogues. It horrifies me. And I even had the experience once of going through it. My daughter at Indiana High School, she was in school at the time when a potential shooter, a person they thought was a shooter, was trying to get into the building. It ended up being a man who was mentally ill, and he had a BB gun. But the police came, there was a news helicopter overhead, it went on for a while, and ultimately the man was shot. I had terror in my heart when that happened. And so I believe we have a problem that we have failed to resolve in this country, and I don't think it has to be either or. Either we have nothing whatsoever, or we take away the rights of respectable gun owners. I think that the problem is we have not had leadership in crafting another path. I think the path is to bring together collaboratively people who are gun owners and clergy and school administrators and collectors and veterans and police enforcement to put their heads together and put together policies and guidelines that will actually solve this problem. I believe that the people, sensible people in Pennsylvania, can do that.
Thank you.
If I'm elected state senator and I take an oath of office, that oath is to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this Commonwealth. And the Second Amendment makes it very clear that we have the right to keep and bear arms, and I will support that right. A firearm is an inanimate object unless somebody uses it. I think the issues that we have with gun violence are very deep and very broad. I look at my own home with my boys who are 10 and 8, and candidly, I look at some of the stuff that they see on TV, the movies, the video games, the way that we have glorified violence, and I think that that is a huge issue that we are turning our head on and we're refusing to talk about. And I also think we have to have a more serious discussion about identifying our mental health situations, our mental health laws, and addressing them appropriately.
If I could, one additional comment. I've been on the board of directors for the Community Guidance Center over in Indiana County, which is a 5-county organization serving mental health needs, a community guidance center. And I absolutely welcome additional money. We've been struggling for a long time with lack of funding, so that's a good thing.
Okay. Thank you very much. We've reached the point of the proceedings where we're going to ask for closing statements. So Joe actually opened this evening, so I will ask for your closing statement first, Dr.
Okay,
Boser.
thank you. Back in 1987, I think it was, Ronald Reagan, as he was campaigning for his second term of office, he posed the question, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? I found that persuasive to me at the time, and while I was registered independent, I voted for Reagan because I was better off then than I had been 4 years before. We've had leadership for the last 20 years, 18 years in District 41, and it's produced certain outcomes. I encourage you to look at the outcomes of this district over the last 18 years and compare where you were 18 years ago to where you are today, and ask yourself if you're better off. If you are, then great. But if you're like a lot of Pennsylvanians and you're seeing a lower wage overall, if you're one of the 1/3 of people that live in rural areas that earn less than $35,000 a year, if you are struggling to keep the lights on, if you are struggling to pay for insulin, if you have to if you're a student and you have to drive 20 miles to access broadband internet, I encourage you to think about whether it might be time for some fresh ideas and a change.
Joe?
Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you, Dr. Boser, for your participation in this evening's debate. It was an honor to be here to have an open discussion about the issues that face not only the 41st District, but our entire Commonwealth. I would be honored to serve as your state senator. I have a genuine passion for our communities. I understand our challenges. I understand our opportunities. But most importantly, I'm optimistic for our future. I really am. I think we have potential. I think we have opportunities. And I want to be an optimistic voice for this district, not only in Harrisburg, but throughout the region. So I thank you for your time. I'm asking for your vote, and I hope to have earned your vote. Thank you.
Thank you again for being here this evening. I think we have an excellent slate of candidates to choose from, and I certainly hope that whoever the winner may be will not be a stranger to our part of your Senate district, and that we will see you frequently down here in Butler.